Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching Empyrion Galactic Survival episode 140. I'm Enigmius and today we're finishing off the starboard side of the Heracles. It's been a long time coming. We've been working on the outer plating for some time and we're finally in a position where we can just kind of wrap it all up. We'll be back on the starboard side doing the detailing pass and focusing on the aesthetics. We've had a chance to do a little bit of aesthetic work on the larger structural sort of scale, but when it comes to the smaller details that'll kind of define the final impression that we have of the ship as it's being completed, that'll be done a little bit later. For now, I'm thinking primarily in terms of building for defense, because this is the part of the ship that has most of the things that you really can't afford to lose, specifically the fuel tanks and the generators. If you lose those, the whole ship just stops. Everything stops. No more guns, no more lights, no more motor cars, not a single luxury. It's just the end. Specifically, the fuel tanks like to explode. I haven't seen them explode. I haven't been in a position in a very long time where a bad guy has been able to get through the hull of my ship and into the interior where they could shoot a fuel tank in order for me to experience that. But when people say your fuel tanks explode when they take fire, I believe them. I choose to accept that as truth. And so I'm providing a little bit of extra protection here in order to specifically avoid that kind of situation. And realistically, the chances of anyone burrowing directly through the hull of this ship to anything, if you're AFK, if you've wandered off to do something else for half an hour, just as the AI super ship approached, there are going to be circumstances where it would be nice to know that your ship was properly defended, but realistically speaking, we're so far in the realm of overkill in the defenses from combat steel and things like this that it's not that much of a concern. Now, the issue with this ship is going to be that you can't spawn it into a world with the basic tools that the game provides. Your average Joe player, he's not going to be able to, import the blueprint and then set up the factory and feed it materials and have it appear. They're going to have to use console commands, or they're going to have special permissions, or they're going to have the permission of their server admins if they're playing multiplayer. Like, this isn't going to be the kind of ship that everyone is suddenly flying around. If it's going to exist in a world for any reason, it's going to be done by bypassing some of the restrictions and limitations that the game enforces. You can build a ship like this all day long. I haven't had to give myself any special permissions in order to build this ship, but having it in your world as a blueprint is a little bit different. That's when those restrictions in particular come into play. So I've kind of given up the idea that I should be building in the sense of limiting the economic impact of a ship like this on the game. I'm going through quite a lot of combat steel. We have quite a lot more to go through before all of this stuff is said and done and we call the ship complete. But realistically speaking, you'd have to have kind of the zest for mining that I do if you have any chance whatsoever of building this legitimately, assuming you give yourself the necessary permissions to ignore the size class and all that other stuff with the blueprints. The whole idea here, and I mean, let's be absolutely honest, this is a game world that I created to bring my activities up to date with the latest version of the game, Alpha 6.0, and I haven't forced myself to set up any kind of mining operations since we got here, just because of the time requirements. It's something that I will be doing as just a part of the process here. I think it's very important for me to be able to say, yeah, I built this ship with stuff that I mined myself. I'm currently working on my estimation of how many materials I would have had access to had my last save not kind of up and died on me as a result of the update. I don't really feel like punishing myself, and I don't feel compelled to punish myself by saying, well, I'm transferring to a new world, so I have to start from scratch. Certain things have been imported, if you catch my meaning. This whole ship is basically going to be an example of that, because we had on other planets mining setups that we could have done or taken advantage of. Zahanes, we had 7 iron mines with auto miners set up over them. We had a capital vessel that we could have used to mine Sathium asteroids. There was no reason why we couldn't have come up with a tremendous amount of combat steel had we actually been able to get into space to gather these materials. So I don't necessarily expect people will have the kind of materials ever to build a ship of this size, but I'm not necessarily going to criticize them if they choose to import some materials of their own just to mess around with it. When it comes to multiplayer, and especially multiplayer PvP, I would hope people would do things legit, and kind of that's the nature of the competition, is he who can produce the resources to build the biggest ship wins. Kind of the way it works out a lot of the time. So in this case, it's he who has the best admin privileges is going to win, but you never know. Point being, it's a big ship and it's got a lot of combat steel, and it's not going to be particularly vulnerable to anything, but there's always that little window in the back of our mind that says you're going to feel like an absolute chump if you skimp in this particular location and you find out that it's going to be a problem later on that you could have avoided if you had just done it properly the way you thought about doing it when you first did the work to begin with. So that's kind of where we're at with it, is we're building in the defenses, not because I think it's going to be needed on a regular basis, but because I feel like I would be doing a disservice to the people who use the blueprint if I don't build in the defenses at this stage of the game. This is actually the 3rd layer of combat steel that you're seeing going into place over the generators. I don't know if generators explode if you shoot at them. I'm assuming that they do, and I think that's one of those things where if you're going to err on the side of anything, err on the side of caution, because you really need the power output, and taking out the generators is probably on a item by item basis one of the fastest ways to disable a ship. Not saying it's easy, just saying, you know, if you're looking at destroying something on a ship that's going to make a big deal, the generator is one of those things. Aside from the core, I would say the generator is probably one of the most important things that you need to be protecting. Otherwise, if it gets destroyed, it's going to have a very noticeable impact on what you're doing. I even thought of putting in a secondary backup generator section towards the front of the ship on the underside, probably below the botanical area, because it's basically wide open and it would be very easy to set that up there. I'm still kind of on the fence about that. It would be pretty easy to set up now before we close it all in on the other side, but realistically speaking, I don't know. For some reason, I just feel like I don't want to. I can't. You say I don't want to, and someone says why, and you say I don't know. I just don't want to. That's where I'm at with it. It's not a rational approach. It's not a rational point of view, but it's just the way I feel about it right now in this specific moment. But by the time everything is all said and done, don't be surprised if there's some extra generators tucked away somewhere on this ship, just as a little bit of a backup in case something goes wrong on the back end. One of the things that I came across as I was kind of watching the footage is that the propulsion, the forward propulsion that we're setting up for this ship is not going to be adequate based on what you're going to see put in place here. We've already got 4 of the extra large thrusters on the outrigger that we built a couple of episodes ago. That's a good step. I realistically, you know, if I think how many thrusters are we going to have on the ship, originally I was thinking we would start with 8 and go from there, and then it came very, very clear to me that 8 wasn't going to be even close to enough, and I said, okay, well, we'll do the outrigger, which is an extra 4, so that's 12, and then we could put another 4 on the other side somewhere, that's 16, assuming we put a total of 8 on the very back end of the ship. And then I realized, watching this footage, that the way I was going to set up those extra large thrusters on the back of the ship, I didn't really like it. I didn't really like the layout, I didn't really like the way it looked, and I didn't really like the limitations that they imposed. So we're going to be doing a little bit more on the starboard side with regards to adding extra thrusters, but we'll probably just do that and then show it to you at some point in one of the videos. It's time to move on to the port side of the ship and start getting that taken care of. come across a few ships in strange places where I didn't even expect to see them. One of them was an ad for a game on my phone that had spaceships on them and close-ups of the hulls, and I got a couple of ideas from that I'll be implementing on the other side. And they could be kind of the design cues that influence what we do in various places all over the ship. So some of the things that we do on the port side are going to make their way over to the starboard side as well. The nice thing about it is that I'm pretty happy with the starboard side overall. There may be some changes made between now and the time we declare that the ship is complete, but realistically speaking, it's in pretty good shape. The main thing that we'll be looking at doing on the starboard side, once we get done with the port side and all that other stuff, is the aesthetic passes and kind of refining things and making them look a little bit more interesting and a little bit more detailed. But for now, we made it. We're to the very back end of the ship. We started at the front. We made it all the way to the back. Next episode, we're going to start working on the starboard side. So if you want to be notified about that and future episodes in this and other series, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.